So today, we're going to set up the system. We'll capture everything that's here. We're going to talk a little bit about the interface, how to navigate the software in a kind of nice, easy, intuitive way. So setup's really important. We're going to talk about how to edit a drawing. I do have a file that is a
Anthony, we can't hear you. Oh,
okay. So we want to just go through the whole process from setup, editing, and a basic way to save your files out. Okay. So if you can, grab your tablet, and if you launch LT3 Raptor, we're going to start by going into the home screen, and we're going to start by just talking about the software itself. Okay. So I'm launching the app right now. So when we start up, we get just a list of all of our jobs. And as we work, those jobs will synchronize and upload into the office. And this should just keep everyone on the same page. All right. I'm going to come down here, and I've added a little sample file. So let me close that and start that again, because you may not see this. Let me shrink this down. There's a button up here that turns on and off the Knowledge Hub. This is a link to YouTube videos and things like that. So when you open that panel up, you'll see links to YouTube videos. And up here, you can click on this. It'll bring you to a Google Drive file. Should look something like this. You'll actually have to come up to the top and click on this to download the file. We'll do that at the end, all right? So I want to give everyone an opportunity to do that while a few people are still joining in. So I'm going to switch over here. Our current laser looks like this, okay? We have at least a few users that might be using the previous generation laser, our 4th gen laser. The setup is a little different on each. I'm going to briefly go through that. We're mainly going to be focusing and running the newer system here, okay, today. I'm briefly touch on the setup of this, but we're going to measure with this one today, all right? Overall, biggest difference you'll notice right away is this has the older system has a wire that's hardwired in, and we have to plug this in when we start up, okay? So on this system, I'm going to show you the proper setup, just our best practices that we recommend. I'll take the laser off for a moment. And we'll start with just a tripod. Okay, I'll close this up. To start with, the tripod, when it comes out of the bag, there are 2 leg locks on the bottom. Generally, we're going to use the top and use this thicker section of the tripod as opposed to the thinner leg. Generally, we'll just leave that where it is. We can unlock the tripod like this, extend these legs all the way, spread those legs out for a nice stable base, okay? This is where things start to get different if you have our older system, right? The current mounting plate looks like this, right? And so I'll show you real quick how this works. We have had great feedback on this because it's a really secure connection and it's fast and easy, but want to let you know how to make sure this is reliable and durable, okay? There's 2 levers. We have like a safety lever here and the primary lever. So when you first get your system, if it's brand new, it should ship like this. We'll pull the small lever and then the primary lever, this little brass pin will pop up, locking that in place. When you pack the system up, we're recommending you press down on the brass pins to close that. The only reason is if this is bouncing around in the back of a truck, we don't want this lever to break against something. So if you're all worried about that, this hasn't happened often, but we have had a couple users report that they snapped this. So just in case, if you're worried about that, we want you to close this during transport, okay? To attach the laser, you want this open with this brass pin up. And it should look something like this to slide the plate in. So the bottom plate is a hex shape, and it should just slide right in the front, and then press down and it'll lock and be nice and secure, just like that. All right? Okay, now that we've got the laser set up and built, the next thing we recommend is to prep your area by clearing anything off. If you have existing countertops in place, like in a remodel situation with a homeowner, I do my best to call a customer and say, hey, I'll be there 25, 35 minutes. If you haven't already cleared anything off your countertops, that helps us get accurate, detailed drawings. Sometimes I show up and they still have things there. I want to help clear that off. I can shoot between, you know, the coffee pot and whatever's on there, but in general, much easier to just clear everything off. When you do that, I also want you to set up any targets, right, so that you can capture, okay? I'm going to switch back into the software. We're going to talk about just the setup for a minute, okay? Not the setup, but really the screen, the interface. Let me get the right button here. Here we go. So I'm going to pop into that download that we just did, okay? And if I come into my downloads folder, okay. Okay, I've got this file that I downloaded, right? On LT3 Raptor, I can go to import job. I'll go to download. I'll click on the LTC file, and we'll open that, right? It'll ask us if we have multiple sets of colors, we could pick the appropriate set of colors. I'll hit next and finish, and it'll import this job, right? Okay, so when I click into this job, this is what we'll capture today, right? But I just want to give a general overview of what you see on the screen, okay? So home brings us back to that screen we were just on, right? We can do a job check. We'll touch on that later. As you navigate between different rooms in your job, you'll make new pages. We would add those pages here as we work, okay? These 4 tabs across the top, templating is where we're going to spend a lot of our time editing, capturing. Details is where we put in things such as customer information, maybe the material, like I can hit up here to add a material. Let's pretend that we're doing I don't know, customer ordered a Uba Tuba slab, right? I could put that in there and say, hey, that's a 3 cm slab. Okay, and I could attach that to a page like that. Okay. Later on, we'll take photos as we work on each job. If you're using routers, if you're using any advanced workflows, we'll use that nesting tab, right? Today, our main focus will be templating. So I'm going to come back here, and we're going to talk about these buttons on the side, right? So a few of our users have used the old software and are transitioning into the new one. And so I want to talk about a little bit of an analogy that I find some success with, and that is in my garage, I've got a big toolbox with a bunch of drawers in there. And when I do a project, hopefully I put my tools away where I can find them. I'd open a drawer and I have all my sockets in a drawer. I'd open another drawer to have screwdrivers. Another drawer has open-end wrenches. So how that should look here is as we open each drawer, we can quickly access in a nice touchscreen friendly way any of those tools that we want. Okay. So if I want to draw and use a, let's say a splash, right? Sometimes we could pick the color that we want. And then up at the top, I'd have different options here, okay? So I want you to practice, if you're new to the software, step 1 is open the drawer that you want. Step 2, pick the tool. Step 3 is pick the color that you want. And then step 4 is your tool options, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4. If you repeat that as you're building your habits and getting used to the system, I want you to pretend you're a rock drummer. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you'll get faster, okay? It might sound a little cheesy, but after a little while, you won't need to be a drummer anymore, and you'll just navigate the software in a nice fluid way, okay? So we'll get into the buttons as we capture next, but I just want to kind of touch on how the software is set up, how it's laid out, so you can get the most out of it, okay? I'm going to get back over to the laser, and let's do the next steps, right? Remember, we have the tripod set up. On the current system, there's a power button up on the top. Right, so I'll press and hold this for about a second. It'll do a little beep, and it should turn blue. Next, what'll happen is we need to tell the system where it's pointed in the world, and we call this indexing. All that we need to do is aim the laser up. The color will change usually to purple. I'll set it flat again, and then we'll just spin the system around. Right, so all we've done is index the system by sweeping it across its range of motion, and now it knows where it's aimed in the world. I want to show you how the mount works, okay? The current arm that we're shipping looks kind of like this. There's a little V-shaped mount, okay? I'll just slide this into this fixture, and that will secure the tablet to that arm. Lots of folks are just holding the system because it's wireless now. They'll just hold it as they're using it, right? I do want to point out on the back, the handle and the tripod that's kind of built in here, the little kickstand, you'll want to close this and rotate this out of the way so you can see that V-shaped mount. Then I'll just slide that in. That'll lock in place, and I want to set the arm to a height here, so that's nice and secure. We'll tighten the knob here, and I want to make sure we can spin the laser around. We don't want the tablet in the way of the laser, right? So it's facing up towards me. I can easily access all the buttons and move the laser around freely. Now that we have the system set up, I'm in my home screen. The laser's on. Remember, we wanted to prep our area by clearing anything off and setting up any targets, right? So I'm in this kitchen. I want to aim the laser around my workspace so I can see all the walls and all the cabinet faces. We're going to use the laser to capture both walls and faces of cabinets, all right? Next, if there's an edge of a cabinet that the laser can't see, I might use a target, right? So as you're following along, if you're brand new to this, some of the essential targets you're going to need, I want to start with what we call T targets. You can see it's kind of shaped like a letter T, right? L targets we use frequently, right? You can see why we name those, right? And you'll also need 3 of these blocks to start with, okay? We'll use these to set our plane, and today I'm going to use T targets for any edge we can't see. So let me switch to another camera. I have a little portable camera I set up. Okay. So here, from the perspective of this laser, if I'm aiming this way, I cannot see this edge. Right. So what we'd need, I can see the face of the cabinet. Okay. But to see this edge, we'll just grab a target and set it here. Just like that. And now the laser will capture what represents this panel in space. I'll set some of these up around on the peninsula edge. Okay. And I'll set one over here. Any edge I can't see, I would use a target. Another style target that's convenient to use is I have this little spring. Sorry, I need another hand here, right? I have this spring clamp. I can just clamp it on like so and make sure this L target is lined up with our edge, right? Also, I like to make sure that I have, if they're fresh cabinets, new cabinets, I just mark the center of the cabinet, right? It's a good idea to always flip your tape. Make sure you don't, do a mismark. I want to check my work along the way. If I had cabinets installed here, often I'm using the orange little stickies. I'll put a line on it and I'll do something like this instead. Okay. This is something I like to shoot in the very beginning, shoot the whole job and come back and shoot this at the end as well. And we'll see that in action shortly. Okay. So now that I have targets set up, sorry for if anyone's getting motion sickness here, right? But I want to give you the point of view. As I aim the laser, I want to make sure I have something to hit all the way around the room. All my cabinet faces, I want to make sure I have a clean point to hit on the range opening and along all of our walls, okay? So if I don't have a good view, before we've set the plane, we can still pick up the laser and move that. Let me switch back over here. All right, so if there's something I don't have a good view of, we could either add a target or pick up and move the system, right? So that's all part of our setup, right? We want to prep the area by clearing it off and setting up targets. So that's prep, position your laser. And next we're going to talk about setting a plane, all right? So I'm going to go ahead and start a new job and we'll see the set plane screen. And then I'm going to go on and talk about why we set a plane and how that works. Okay, so here I am back in this job, or back in the home screen. I can come to new job and put a job reference. Most fabricators will just put a job number of some type. I'll just put today's date. Okay. And we'll add a job, okay? It'll create this job and we see this screen. This should become very familiar as you're working. So now that we see this, again, if you haven't shot any points, you haven't set your plane yet, you're still free to move your system to get the best position in the room. If you're new to this, you want to practice those steps and really be intentional about it. After you've done this a dozen times or 100 times, you can walk into a room and you'll know, hey, I don't want my laser here, I want it here. Is there a panel? Is there this, that? Every layout's a little different. You want to find that best position, all right? So I'm going to do something else now. I'm going to hit the lights here. We're going to talk about what is a plane and why it matters. I'm going to turn this off. And as a visual example, I find this is also a great tool. I like using a level laser. Once I added this to my kit, I was able to do a whole bunch of new things. But today, the reason I want to show this is as I turn this on, this laser is showing us a nice level plane. This level laser automatically levels. That's going to give us a level line. Now, if I have new cabinets, it's a good practice for me to go around and check and make sure those cabinets are level anyway, right? That's one of the benefits of something like this. I'll go around and check and make sure everything's within that tolerance, okay? But the reason I want to point this out right now is this is representing a flat level plane in space. So as we use the LPI laser to capture, and I'll use this bright green pointer laser so you can see on the video, we could either measure points on the cabinets or up in the walls, and the system will flatten everything to the plane that we're about to set, right? Whether we're up here or down here, it'll compress all that to our flat surface that represents, in most cases, the surface of our stone. Okay, so setting a plane is really important. I've got another visual I'm going to cue up here. Okay, so here we've got a grid laid out. We see the left, right, and back, and if those plane points weren't captured with any precision, it could distort our measurements. We want to make sure that plane is nice and level and flat. All our points that we capture will get flattened perpendicular to the plane. All right, this is an important concept, and I just want to make sure everyone can see a couple different versions of this so we know why it's important. Later on, we can take that plane and capture other surfaces, right? So here's a different way to show this. I'm explaining this different ways because I think it's really important, right? Today, I'm going to capture a plane right here. Later on, in another job, sometimes I would set my plane on a wall, right? So wherever we put that triangle, those 3 points on the triangle tells the system where are we measuring. And I do want to call out, we don't recommend setting a plane by shooting 3 points on the floor, all right? Okay. So there's a question, is there a maximum range of deflection up and down that doesn't affect the laser measurement? If I am understanding your question, what I would recommend, what we recommend in general is, for the most part, in a kitchen like this, we want you to set your plane and capture within 6 inches above or below that plane. Reason being is, let me see if I have, if a wall is out of plumb, for example, all right, let me do this. Okay. All right, if this wall was out of plumb, okay, and if I start shooting too far away from our plane, we're getting this difference here, and that would give us less than accurate measurements. So generally shoot within reason as close as you can to your plane, right? Does that answer your question? Perfect, okay. So how do we set the plane, right? Often I'd use a laser like this and shoot 3 points that represent that triangle in space, just right on this green laser beam. But I'm gonna start with our kind of standard, simple way of capturing a plane. We'll take 3 of these blocks, okay? I wanna make sure they're all the same height. And when we set that plane using that triangle, we're gonna set these out in space, and generally I want it to represent the majority of our measured area, okay? We'll set those out. If I set these really close, if we set these close, and my laser dot's a little high or a little low, as that plane extends over a large area, we get a less than accurate plane. So the order does matter, right? So I'm going to, in this case, sometimes those plane points can be behind you as well. I'm starting over here, and I'm going to zoom in and give you a close-up on this. Okay, so hopefully you can see that pretty well, right? We just want to be anywhere along this line. Okay? It doesn't have to be right here at the arrow. What matters here is the height. So as long as we're pretty much on that line, I tap on the screen, and we've captured the first plane point. Okay, so I'll come back to, let's use this screen, right? So that's our first plane point. Now we'll come over here for our second plane point. And again, I'm just getting along that line, tap on the screen to capture. Point 3, I've got set up in the back near the range opening. We'll line up there. tap to capture. Those 3 points define our plane. Now we're ready to capture, okay? Does anyone have any questions about this? I tried to over-explain it a little bit because I think it's a really important concept to understand, right? Okay. Now, we've done all our setup. There's a little method that was taught to me that I like to share. The 3 P's of proper setup. We prepped our area by clearing everything off and setting targets. We found the best position in the room, right? And we set a proper plane. So prep, position, proper plane. Is that 3 P's? Is that 4 P's? I don't know, but you get the idea, right? So I want you to follow that habit and it'll become natural and you'll really be accurate. Next, I'm going to shoot a reference cross. The first thing I like to capture, and I've done this many, many times, is I'm going to shoot a point that represents my sink center line. So I'm in capture on cross. I'm going to tap to capture a single point. That's a single point in CAD space, right? And now we're going to capture all the different lines that represent our cabinet faces, all right? So in capture, I'm going to go to line. So step 1, step 2, step 3, I want to be in cabinets, and we'll talk about the different modes. I'm going to start with continuous. Okay? So all I'm going to do is go to this dishwasher panel I've got off on the side, tap anywhere in the empty drawing area, and it'll capture that first point. Come around to the second target, and we get that first line. Okay? Now, we have the line. Notice there's this little orange X, right? When I'm in continuous mode, I could hit start new line. That little X goes away. That means we're just going to get a fresh new line. I'm going to aim at the face of the cabinet and capture 2 points, come along my sink run. I'm not sure if I'm off screen or not. I tried to set this up so you'd see most of it. And we see that next line, okay? So there's a little gap there. That's okay. We'll fix that in a minute, right? So that's capturing a continuous where I press start new line as we work around the room. I also want to show you autofill it. I find it saves me a ton of time. All it means is it's going to connect those corners as we capture around the room. Now I've come to the range run cabinet. Shoot here. Come to the other side, shoot again, and now I'm going to come around to the peninsula. And as we capture those points, when I'm in autofill it, if you watch right up here, it's going to automatically close that corner, right? So there's not a technical reason why I need to be in autofill it or continuous. It just saves me time and clicks. Okay, let me move my little portable camera out of the way so I can see this other target. So just move around the room and capture those cabinet lines. We see that general shape. Okay. Something else I've had a lot of success doing is I like to capture the inside of the sink base cabinet or any cabinet has cutouts. Let's say a cooktop might be another reason. I'm going to start a new autofill it. I've done this dozens of times, and I think it really helps. I'm just shooting the inside so that if a customer ever changes their sink model, I know exactly how much room there is in that cabinet, all right? So now we've captured our cabinets. Let's capture the walls. We're still in capture. We still want to capture lines, but now we're going to tell the system that I want to capture walls. These are our CAD layers, but this is also the foundation of what makes the software, I think, really exciting is its CAD intelligence. It understands the difference between a cabinet, a finished, a wall, and we'll see that pay off later. So I'll switch over to red. I do need to make sure we are in a continuous mode. And to start with, I'm going to shoot just every 6 to 8 inches. I'll look for humps or bumps in a wall and capture a little bit more as I see fit. And we just keep shooting along the room. I want to take my hand off the laser, otherwise I'll get that little message that the system detected any movement. Okay. And then I'm going to zoom in and show you this corner. I think this is important. I just patched this. I didn't get time to paint it yet. So it's not perfect. It's kind of ugly, but I think the concept is still there. How do we capture a drywall corner, right? So you can see this wall has a big patch here. This will be painted so we can see more difference later, but that's just not done yet, right? So as we capture, I want to get to about 3 inches out of a drywall corner, okay? Then we want to drill the corner. I want to get right in that corner, okay? I don't hit start new line. I don't like to fillet a drywall corner. I actually want to capture right in there. And what we're doing is we're capturing that extra tape and drywall mud that floats out in that corner. Okay. Then I come about 3 or 4 inches out on the other side and then continue shooting. So let me get back on the screen so you can see what that looks like. Okay. And so I'll zoom in right here so we could see. I'll show the capture points, right? We have a point just outside that corner, in the corner, and I'm going to continue shooting, okay? There's a question, is measuring non-directional? From a technical standpoint, no, there's not a requirement to work in one direction or the other. I like to build habits and kind of find consistency, so I tend to just kind of work in one direction around a room, but there's not a technical reason why you need to work in one direction or another. Okay, we don't need to like offset for the physical ball or any of that kind of stuff. Okay, good question. Let's see. I'm going to just best fit to zoom out and let's just keep shooting along the wall. I'm going to put the mouse down and show you a little bit more of the rhythm that I tend to have here. And I'll go across our range opening. I'm just going to continue the line along. And it is best if I take my hand off the laser for each measure point so I don't introduce any movement in there, okay? So you can see I'm in view, capture points, and you can see all the little points that we have shot, okay? At the end of the day, what we're doing with the system is we point a little red dot in the real world, and on the screen we use different tools to connect those dots and create our drawing, okay? So now that we've captured the wall, let's capture our range opening. So I'm still in capture. We'll come down to the opening tool, okay? How wide do I want this opening? I have it set to 30 and 1/16. I want to make sure I'm in a flat polish or an appliance edge. Next, we're going to follow the steps. The software gives us the steps right here. Step 1 of 2, select the front edge to base the opening off of. Well, what does that mean? It's asking, what do I want to be square to? So when we do a range opening, we want it to be perpendicular, square to this front line. So I'll select that line and it highlights blue. Now we'll capture the 2 points marking the sides of the opening. I'm going to shoot the edge of the face frame on the left. You don't have to start on the left or the right. I'll shoot on the right side, and when we capture, when I tap on the screen, it's going to go ahead and make that opening for us. If I zoom in, now our cabinets are set a little bit wider than this 30 and a 16th. The software is finding the center of the points and giving us an even reveal on each side. So it'll be exactly the opening that we specified off of those points. The last thing I want to capture here is the center line for our sink. In capture, I'll come to center line, Again, we'll follow the steps that the software points out up here. Select the line to base it off of. Which way do we want that center line to go? I want it to go into the countertop area. Line up my laser dot on that first point we shot. Tap to capture. Okay. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. And we could see I'm not perfect here, but distance, points, we're within 16 thousandths of that original point that we shot. All that means is that I didn't kick the tripod. I didn't bump the system in any way, okay? I like to do that just as a little extra sanity check. I am still gonna get a tape measure out and check all my work, but there's dozens of jobs, whether, let's say it's a remodel, well, a homeowner occupied, they let their dogs in or something comes, you know, I wanna control my workspace as best as I can, but I don't always have that control. So, commercial job sites. I might be on the phone for a minute answering a question, and I look away from my system. I come back, and there's someone that's pulling an extension cord across this. This is just a quick, easy way for me to know I did not have the system move while I was capturing, okay? We call that a reference cross, right? James had a question. What if the opening is crooked? Great question. There is more to it here. If our cabinets, let me pick the right camera angle here. Yeah, let's use this one, right? If this cabinet run was not straight, right? I would capture each of the cabinet faces and capture these in our cabinet color. So let me show you what that might look like. The vast majority of the time though, when I set up, I'm gonna eagle eye down this line. Here's what I mean by that. As I'm setting up targets and things, often I'll look down that line and see, are those cabinets out of plane with each other? If they are, it's real simple. I capture this as a line, this as a line, and I either draw or shoot a control line that represents the edge that I want. And we can also start a new line. I could just capture those as just an extra level of kind of a sanity check there. Okay. Does that help? All right. So we have everything captured. Let me show you what the screen looks like. I didn't flip back over. You can see I could easily just come back in and capture those two cabinet lines. Okay. So I feel like I've captured all the lines here, right? So we have proper setup, the 3 Ps of proper setup. We captured everything that's here. I shot a reference cross. I know I didn't bump the system. Next, I'm going to check check the work that we did. So my favorite way to do that is in distance. All right. There's a distance button on the side here, and I'll often use dimensions, and it will just turn on the line length all the way around our drawing. Okay. Now here, these lines end where I shot points, but that's not the true length that's here. I need to go into fillet, right? Sharp fillets, what I'm going to use most often here, and extend those lines. You see the length updates a little bit. Okay. We want to go through and just connect our corners when we check our work. Okay. I could also do this and this on those lines. Okay. So next, I'm literally going to walk around the room and check this. This is always important, but I want you to leave every job site knowing exactly what you captured matches the real world. Something that's kind of handy is I can take the tablet off right now. If you have the newer system, you can take the tablet off and walk around. I'm still kind of used to the old one just because I had used it so many times where I was kind of tethered in. But I'll go around and check all of these and we'll make sure that we're good, okay? A lazy Susan cabinet, I know these tend to bow in a little bit, but within reason, we'll go around and make sure everything's spot on. Once that's done, we'll start editing our drawing, okay? Distance, I'll turn dimensions off. There's one other tool I'd like to show you in distance. So distance is our hub for on-site verification. It won't put any notes or dimensions on our page. This is just my quick way to check things. Parallel, I love this one. I can click on one line and another. And that's a really fast way for me to check. Center lines, I can go point to point. Check things this way. I do recommend zooming in quite a bit. It's just a little bit easier and quicker and the best fit to zoom back out. Okay. So once we're happy with that, we'll start editing. So this is a good time where if you have downloaded that little practice job, if you import that, your drawing will look similar to this. I don't think I have the extra lines on the range opening, but you should be able to follow along from here. Okay. Okay, so now that we've got everything in reality on our screen, often what I'll do next is create our main overhangs. So I'll go to offset. Element is just a single element, right? What color do we want? I want to do a blue for finished edge. How much do I want to offset? 1.5 inches is pretty common, right? So I'll just click on a line and the direction that we want that parallel line or the offset. Okay. Over here, let's do a 10-inch overhang. I have shortcuts, right? I can get rid of a shortcut or hit star to add a shortcut for commonly used numbers. Okay. And we get all those overhangs. Next, I'll fill it and connect corners. Just work around the room, close all of our shapes. Okay, there we go. Now, I want to point out real quick, up at the top, it says there's an issue found. Okay. If I use the job check or the page check button, we click on that. This is like a spell checker for your drawings and your geometry, right? I'm not great at spelling. I'm grateful for spell checker in text messages and emails. This is the same thing, right? Not everything, but many little gaps and issues that might exist in your drawing, this software will help you fix. So I can click on one of these and it's even going to highlight and show, hey, what should be a closed shape? In this case, I can even come up here and hit fix now and it'll fix that for me, right? So now we have complete closed shapes. We see a square footage number in the bottom, okay? Another thing I want to show you is rotate. So if we click on rotate, we get the small slider and you can just grab and twist your drawing around. And if I go and click on a line, it'll straighten that drawing on our screen. So see how that's bold for a second? That means that's nice and flat and level on our page. Alternatively, if that is closer to being plumb, I click on it, it would straighten that. That is now plumb on our screen. We could draw off of that if we want, right? So a couple other things we might want to do. Let's do a drop-in, right? So you might have some drop-in files, some sinks saved in your company account, right? I'll just use let's try a Blanco sink. Okay. That little blue circle is important. That's the point at which this will insert, right? So I can zoom in here. Even though our cabinet is kind of in our drawing view off to the side, I like to leave this straight. So we're going to click the snap point to insert the drop-in, right? So I like to click right about here. This is going to align at 0 degrees. See how it says 0 down here, to the line that we align to, and then we give it the direction. I have a 4-inch offset. It'll push it back 4 inches from that line. Okay. I don't really rotate here very often. Okay. Most of the time, I just leave this right at 0. Okay. Question is, do sinks each need to be an individual file? Great question. I prefer it just organizationally. Here, for this software to insert just the one sink, we would have that origin of the sink, that's 0, 0 on the X and Y. I would have just this sink in here, right? And then I would have multiple files imported, organized by folder, right? So a lot of the sinks I have in here, I used to have cooktop brands. I used to have folders for outlet cutouts or shower plumbing fixtures, all kind of organized. I think it ends up saving you time if you have a DXF with 20 sinks or 40 sinks. I take each one of those and put them in their own drawing space, right? There's a way to batch import. Contact us. We can go into more information with you on that, all right? So that's how I'd import the one sink, or what we call a drop-in, because we're dropping that shape into our drawing. Next, let's do a couple of scenes, right? So let's see here. In draw, I'll come to seam line. There's a couple I want to point out the differences of, right? Some fabricators, if they're using CNC routers, you might be doing Euro seams, right? So I'll show what that looks like and then draw some different seams in later. You have settings up here. I want the seam to start here and go to that wall, right? That's one option. Something else I'd like to show is these cabinets. Try to set these cabinets as square as possible, but as all of you know, there's a reason that we're templating, and that's because things are not perfectly square. Okay. And so these aren't perfectly square. If, depending on your production methods, let's say we want to take this line and extend this line in space until it meets the wall. If that's the case, we'll go into draw, seam line, extended seam. If I pick on this line, it will connect to the wall, and this is just an extension of this front edge. All right. Another thing we could try is a perpendicular to edge. That would be if I don't, on this L shape, I don't want to follow this line. I want to be square to the sink run. I'd click here and go here. So I like to just talk about briefly the difference between an extended seam and a perpendicular to edge. Another option you have with perpendicular is we can offset that seam. So some companies like to, it's kind of regional, depends on where you work and how you work. If we had a fillet radius, let's say a 3-inch radius on an inside corner, okay? I'll come back to draw, seam line, perpendicular. If we want to offset this out of the corner, we could do it like that with the offset switch. So depending on how you like to draw and how you like to fabricate, those are a couple of the tools that are accessible for you, okay? Now it's showing a little something here. I'm just going to hit check. Fix now. It's going to clean that geometry up for us. Other things we might be doing, I might come in a draw, splash miter. Let's put in a 4-inch splash along each wall. Now I'm going to color and revise the color for a flat polish here and here. Now, if this is something you're doing often, I haven't touched on this yet, but quick actions is a great little tool. As you find your flow and as you get used to working, what tools you use most often. We can come in here and we can add many functions into this, right? I'm actually gonna hit edit. I'm gonna erase this quick action that I had in before, so you can see how easy this is. A quick action, if I go back to the toolbox analogy, all right, remember I have my toolbox, and when I'm organized, I put all my tools away, I can find them. Well, sometimes the tools I'm using the most often, I'm kind of lazy and I just put them in that top section, right? That's kind of how I view my quick actions. These are tools I use all the time. They're readily accessible for me. I'm in color revise. I'm just going to hit add, right? And we get a shortcut. You can also edit the order of the shortcuts, right? I like to put these, in the order that I tend to work. It's just really a fast, intuitive way. Quick text, things like that I can put in here, all right? So quick actions, I want you to play with that and get used to that. It saves you a lot of time as you're editing, right? Often, what I'll do, as soon as I finish checking my dimensions, I open that quick action panel and have my most frequently used tools, and I'm tapping through the screen really quickly, okay? I'm gonna pause right now. Is there anything else that anyone wants to see in this drawing? I'm gonna throw a few dimensions in. This is where we start to see just kind of every fabricator has maybe a few different sets of rules. I do recommend, if you're a small organization, just figure out what works for you. Bigger organizations, I think it really makes sense to have some standardized drawings you export that are samples that you can show new team members, and you kind of set some standards, right? Earlier, I was showing the distance tool. This is how we could check our work, but it won't place anything on here. Now let's go to label, and we'll throw some dimensions in here, right? I'll just tap. I'm showing you with a mouse first, but in reality, I'm just tapping just outside each line, right? A lot of those common dimensions. I'll use the parallel, and I might go from the center line to the seam, tap on the one we want to keep. Okay. Maybe we'd use points from this point to this point, right? Any of those dimensions. I like to put a fair number of dimensions on here just to show everyone what we're going to make, right? Parallel, I like to put one here often, okay? And sometimes I tapped on the wrong one there. Let's tap here. I'm going to tap just about. Let me show you where I'm tapping. This is actually a good thing to talk about. So I'm using a mouse to kind of show you where I'm tapping, but we worked really hard to design this to be touchscreen friendly. So I want to talk about snap points. And what that means is if I'm not using a mouse, like many of our users are just using the tablet, I can tap close to, but I don't have to be precisely on a geometry. So if I tap right about here to select this line, I don't have to be right on it. Here, this is the closest thing that I can select, and it would detect that line. So I'm going to do that again, but do this a little different. If I pick here, and if I tap out here or inside the countertop, you see I'm closer to the cabinet line? It would pick that instead. So as you play with this, you'll find that you don't have to click right on something you kind of get the freedom to pick the closest thing, and you move really quickly on the touchscreen interface. Okay, we call that snap point. Just think, as you tap, your selection will act like a magnet and go to the closest thing on the screen. Okay. Great. So let's say I think I'm all done with my drawing here. And I found it really helps for me to finish a drawing while I'm right here in the job site. And I've learned this lesson the hard way, right? I've got things going on at home. I got to pick up kids and take them to this baseball practice or whatever. I really prefer to finish a job right here while I can look at and check everything, right? So when I was measuring all day, every day, I had to work quickly. I'm usually listening to music in my earbuds, rocking along, plowing through a job like this, usually really quickly. I found I really like to pause at this moment where I believe I'm done with the job. I pause my AC/DC or whatever music's playing in my earbuds. I take a breath and I just scan around the room. Is there anything I forgot? Do I need to inch and make this splash a little longer? Is there a return I need to hit around this corner? Does the sink fit in the cabinet? Is this seam going to work? I just pause for a second, review the drawing. Okay, looks great. Now I'm going to take photos. Now on the older system, this is where I would, I take that little moment, that breath, I unplug the cord, then take my tablet off and start taking my photos, right? Here, you can take photos and stay connected. It is actually really helpful, especially if you're measuring a bunch of rooms, right? I'm going to come up to the top and hit photos, hit capture. Okay. I tap on the room that I'm working in. I like to stand way back, right? Try to capture the whole room. Tap on the photo to take that picture. And I like to zoom in for details, right? If this was a real kitchen, I'd like to take photo of the plumbing in a sink base. Okay. For example, I've got all those photos and I might call out something. Hey, this isn't a complete cabinet install. And it's true because I put a lot of these cabinets in last week. This one isn't fully installed. So what might I do? I'd use these tools here and call out. Okay. And in a severe situation, I'll even have a customer sign right there. Okay. So for me, photos really tell the story to everyone in the office, whoever is not at the job site, they get a lot of information from these, right? So I think it's really important to take those photos, put in all the details, all the notes that kind of tell that story, set up the install and the whole team for success, right? So if that's all done, I'll go home, and next time we connect to the internet, it'll upload your job so that everyone can see that. I'm going to come into edit, and you can have a bunch of different statuses here. I say, hey, this is ready for our account managers. I could save that. They'd see that status on their view, and then they can proceed with the job. Now, let's say I'm going to export this job. There's two things I like to do, and where you do these two different things will kind of depend on your process. Many smart fabricators are installing the software wherever they're prepping your geometry, your CAD for CNC saws and routers, right? So we'll pretend that's the process we're going to do today. But first, I want to export paperwork. Okay? So we go into this practice job. Okay? I've got a page here. I can actually erase that page because there's nothing on it that's useful. I'm going to delete that page. Okay? And I do want to bring up, and maybe it's worth pausing for a second and talk about this with everyone. Every time I measure in a job that might have multiple rooms, when I'm done in one room and I pick up and go to the next room, we'll make a new measure page, right? Stand this up. I'll go here, add a new capture page, and we're setting a new plane. A new page, a new plane, a new room. I'll count on make sure everyone understands that relationship, okay? So often you'll have multiple pages within one job, okay? So let's export some paperwork. I'll come into File. I like using Save to Folder. This is kind of my go-to, all right? And I'll talk briefly about what is getting exported here. Okay? We have the LT3 job file. Just export this. This is just the project file. You export this as the job is saved. This just becomes like a safety measure, if that makes sense. You can always see exactly what's happening when this was exported. Okay? Our paperwork, right, and all of our options that are in our PDFs, right, here. Most users turn off individual shop sheets. Shop sheets would be if we have multiple pages, we get one PDF that might have 3 pages if you've measured 3 rooms. Individual shop sheets will give you 3 individual PDFs. Each one only has 1 page. Right? So most users turn that one off. This is a good starting point, I'd say, for many. Shop sheet, maybe photos, maybe manifest, and job packet. So first, let's do our paperwork. Let's get that shipped out first. I'll turn off CAD CAM files. We'll do that next. Okay, so I'll hit next. The job packet, I do want to talk about this one. That's this selection here. This is if I want my shop sheets and other stuff, the template summary, maybe customer agreements, all exported all together in one big giant PDF, okay? Select the pages that we'd want. What photos do we want? That's where it's gonna go. And if you have a bunch of photos, give it a moment, it's gonna render those PDFs and it should open that folder for us. And then we take those PDFs and put them wherever we need them. I'll show you what that looks like in just a second here. Here we go. So here's our job file. In the PDF folder, we see several things, right? Shop sheets, right? There's our drawing. We can put your company logo up here. You can fill out all the information you need on the top and the side. Job packet. This will give us a summary. Job manifest. This one's kind of useful because it'll separate all your parts out for you. Shop sheets and the photos all in one master PDF, right? Lots of users like that one. Okay? So now that we got our paperwork out, I want to show you something I think is really useful, and that is the CNC saw page. So if you click on the page menu, CNC saw page will kind of do a quick drawing cleanup. I want to do one other thing. I actually want to show you here. Let's go to color. I'm going to revise the color. I'm going to show you the, let's see this one. Let's see if that one should work. CNC saw page. Next. This is a good starting point for this. I'm going to separate our seams by about 2 inches. Hit create. Okay. And what it did is it's creating the CAD file that ultimately we're going to want. I don't usually want cabinet lines, dimensions, and a bunch of text when we're programming our saws and our routers. So the CNC saw page is just a quick pass. That's this button right here. At cleaning up the drawing, getting rid of the stuff we don't want. And this is really easy to drag this in. If we have multiple pages, it would have merged all these pages into one drawing area, one drawing space. I'd have just one DXF to import instead of many, right? Also, if you notice, I changed a color of that one portion of the center line to a reference drop-in, or if you have a reference keep color, it would keep that geometry, whereas standard cabinet lines, standard reference lines get erased, right? So this would be a great starting point for that DXF file. I'll come to File, either go to Save to Folder, or I'll just save this as its own DXF page. And there we go. Okay. I think it's really convenient. The job by default, it'll make a folder with all of your elements all collected together. Okay. So we captured, we saved this job up to the cloud. As soon as you get an internet connection, that job is now accessible for your team back at the office. They can quickly export paperwork and prep and clean up your drawing to go in your CAD CAM process. Okay. That's most of the core of what your users are going to be doing. Larger teams, that's kind of where this kind of stops. Many users also want to go into like our cloud. So I might talk about that just really briefly. There's a companion website that is Templar.com or LPICloud.com. Let me just go to that real quick. I think it's really beneficial to have this up on your phone as well, because you can take photos. There's some stuff you can do if you're measuring in the field to make this fast and easy. So now I'm just in a web browser on LPI Cloud. When you log in, I'll briefly talk about some of the options that exist here. So we see the list of jobs, right? If you have a cloud-only user, which some of the office staff can have a lightweight version of their login, we could even come in and recently we added some features where you can check dimensions and things in here. This software is always kind of evolving. We're adding new things. So if there's a dimension someone didn't add, you could, you could check that here, right? Whatever that dimension might be. Okay. Your company settings. So if you're an administrator for your company account, this is where you'd upload your logos, add your team members, and have any of your company settings, right? So your edge styles and your colors you'd access here. And this will push to all of your users in your company, right? I have different edge styles that were created here, different versions of things that in my testing. So this is how you set up the template intelligence to understand, the software understands, hey, this is a finished edge. You can come in here. It understands finished, is it unfinished, or a reference edge. This is how the logic of the software works. Recently, we just added a feature where you can reorder these, which is, I think, really handy. So I could bring this up to the top. Maybe I want wall to be second, right? And I could preview how that would look when I'm back in the software. I think that's really useful, okay? Other settings for export, you can put in a lot of company-wide CAD export settings. If you need to lock out people changing settings just because, you can hit a little checkbox here and that'll lock out the settings so that this takes priority and the users can't get creative with those settings, which is helpful when you have bigger teams, okay? So I just want to touch on that briefly. So the core, the basics, just to kind of review, we want to have proper setup. I talked about this a few times, but it's essential to just finding those best habits. Prep your area by clearing everything off and setting your targets. Find the laser position, set a proper plane. You'll capture your area, connect your corners, and then check your dimensions. Right? Close all your corners and check the raw dimensions. Then open the quick action panel. Do all your editing, do your overhangs, close your corners, seams, sinks, whatever's appropriate for your team. I like to take that moment where I just pause, look at the room. I really advise finishing your drawings, finishing those jobs while you're here and you can look at it. I hate that feeling if I felt like I was rushed and I went home and I forgot a detail and I didn't take a picture. I hate making a second trip to a job. We really work hard to make it so you can finish everything right here on the system, have a complete job, and move on, right? It really reduces mistakes. So I can't recommend that enough, right? Finish your job right then and there. I don't want to have questions later, right? It's the number one way to, I think, reduce remakes and reworks, okay? There's a question about full height backsplash. I do think that's worth doing its own lesson. The long and short of it is that we'll set a plane. Instead of that triangle being on those blocks, establishing the plane here. If we want a plane on a wall, we literally shoot our plane right on the wall. Shoot a plane point here, here, and up here. Now the system would flatten everything this way. I like to, and there's a lot of ways to do this, but I think it's really helpful to project a I'll show you here, a plumb and level line on our space, okay? With the traditional hardware, this is really the best thing to do. And I would actually capture a level line onto our screen and a plumb line onto our drawing. And now we have plumb and level that we can draw off of. That's a core thing that I'll tell you the first couple of years I was measuring. I didn't have this, I didn't know this. And I didn't have the best results from full height splash. There's different ways we can target and things like that. But I do think that's worth doing a group training, or you can set up a one-on-one training there, okay? And those same concepts for full height splash are the same for a fireplace, shower. Really, we can capture anything as long as it's flat, all right? So other resources I want to talk about, if I come into here, right? Okay. If I come up to help, we've got options here. In fact, let me click into a job. I think this is a better example. If I'm in a job and I have a question or a problem or something really techie that I need help with, if you come to help and contact support team, you can ask a question, provide feedback. If you think there's a feature that'd be really helpful, or, hey, there's a new software update, Windows update did this, that. You can pick one of these three options and get feedback for our team. What's useful about this is if I put a brief description here, describe my problem, my question, when you hit send, it'll actually take a snapshot of the job you're working in, send that to our team, and it really helps us better diagnose what your question is, have a better understanding of what it is you're trying to do. Providing a feedback, that might be, hey, I'd like a button that does this or that. And that we have been able to, it doesn't happen right away, we have been able to listen to customers, what they want, and roll that into the software, right? So I want to point this out. This is a great way to communicate with us. Also, in help, you can go to support. You can always reach us directly at these numbers right here, okay? And we can set up one-on-one trainings, right? So we're going to start doing classes like this a few times a month. We'll probably have a recurring kind of beginner training where we do just a once overall kind of training like today, and then go into specific topics. Full height backsplash, sinks, maybe a little bit more of that CAD CAM workflow, depending on what is happening in the process where you prep all the drawings for whatever machinery you might have. So we plan on doing more of these. We also have one-on-one trainings we can do. So I appreciate everyone taking some time to join us today. I'm going to stand by if anyone has any questions, but otherwise, we're going to take this video and put this together next. Might take a little bit for me to do that. I'm going to pull the audio and video, put it together, and make a YouTube link, or you'll be able to follow back into this meeting, and Google will create a video. That generally takes a few hours, though. Okay. We're happy to help, and we want to make sure everyone's succeeding with the system, right? Your success is really important to us, so don't hesitate to reach out with questions. Our team wants to help you succeed. All right. Great. Let me take a look here. There's a question, RD. I shoot a wall behind your sink. It measures. So if you have a measurement and there's some kind of discrepancy, RD, couple things I might want to look at. What I find most often, if I have something like that, did I place my target nice and clean? Did I get a reflection in a corner or something like that? Maybe that's a quick mock-up I can do about what could cause a bad measurement. So give me a second here. And I'm going to do a different. So I'm going to add something else to this. Thanks for bringing that up, actually, because this is, I think, useful. I'm going to get a couple targets here. The number one time I might have a measure issue, and this is more frequently with our older system than our current system, is reflection. Okay. I'll show what this looks like. So let me get a laser point going. And then I'm going to get a camera over here. And let's talk about this. Okay. You can kind of see, and this happens most often if I have a shiny panel. As the laser's traveling along, okay, it can bounce if you're at a really shallow angle like this. That angle of attack's really shallow. And just like if I skip a rock on a pond, it could bounce, right? You can see the point here, and it's reflecting. We'll pretend this is our back wall, right? So when this happens, let me grab a tape measure and show you kind of what the system's doing here. Angle up a little bit, right? So as the laser's aimed in any direction, right? The system's aimed here, right? If we get a reflection, if it bounces like this, we could get a bad measurement. What you'll see is it's throwing the point out in space, kind of over here. So our testing team and engineering team, they have these black targets. Well, they're actually not targets. We call them shields. But the best thing to do is if you just put this here, it would block the reflection, and your laser is more likely to take this point here. Okay. So another technique that I like to use, this is my go-to for this application. If I'm at a really shallow angle, I like to take these blocks, okay? And if you take a look, there's a 2-inch and a 1/2-inch offset line. I like to set these up and measure a point in the back and then the front, right? In this case, this is a very clean way to get a measurement. And then I would offset this line 2 inches. I like to do this right away so I don't forget. And often I would shoot this in a different color as a visual reminder so that I would offset this to this edge, okay? Most often that's what we would see. if there's a measurement that's when you're checking your work, if something's off a little bit. We do have these stickers, right? The orange sticky dots, or the older system, they were green. These can help with this, but it's not really what they're for. These we use when there's a shiny surface or a surface that has any depth, right? So if we get reflection, we'd use a shield. If you have a surface that absorbs like a glass backsplash or anything like that, or you get a really dark cabinet, then you'd use the orange stickies to make sure you get a clean point, okay? Does that answer your question? Most often it's because of something like that. And here's another piece of it. I'll still leave this kind of mock-up here. It's the number one offender that I've seen is those cabinet panels, right? And if this point gets thrown out, this line isn't what's wrong. It's the back wall, because it's kind of throwing this out and making this line longer when we connect those corners. Okay. Once you see it and you kind of get to know how the system responds on different surfaces, I can walk in a room and be like, oh, I'm going to put little sticky dots on front of these cabinets. Usually those are really dark colors. The dark blue navy cabinets tend to do that more than the dark green cabinets. But that's absolutely why I like to leave every job knowing I've checked everything every time. Okay. Good question. Great. Yeah. Unless anyone else has any questions, I'll hang out for another minute, another few minutes. But I appreciate your time. We appreciate your business, and we look forward to seeing you again. Okay. Thank you.